Welcome to Lens Cafeteria, where today we're serving up some 100mm f2.8 entries from Canon, Konica, Nikon, and TTArtisan. Try to keep your food on your plate and don't throw it around even if you don't like it. These lenses arrived at wildly different times, which is going to make this a fascinating test as it will pit different design capabilities against each other as well as different makers. In chronological order, the Konica arrived in 1966, with the one in this test very likely being an early unit as it still has a milled focusing ring. Canon released the lens in this video in 1973. The Nikon arrived about 6 years later in 79, and the youngest entrant here is the TTArtisan, which arrived, literally just fell off the turnip truck, in 2023. Typical lens uses for the 100mm focal length include portraits, especially shoulder-up bust portraits. For your bottom line up front, this comparison is all over the place, rather like spaghetti that's been thrown a long distance. The optical designs include a triplet, an Ernostar, and probably two sonars. The Canon is likely a sonar, but it looks a good deal different from sonar-type lenses of its era. This test will be complicated by the different design ages, available technologies of the times to the lens designers and makers, and also the basic design types. Now that said, the Ernostar is a triplet descendant, and the sonar is an Ernostar-derived design, so all of these lenses are in the same design family tree. My prediction going into this, having used all of these lenses, was that they would be very evenly ranked. I assumed that the Nikon would slightly best the Konica, and that the Canon and TTArtisan would fight it out for third. I also assumed that the point spread between them would be thinner than an empty ketchup packet. Your focal length and angle of view are 100mm and about 24.4 degrees. The aperture range is 2.8 through 22 on all except the Konica, which stops at f16. The element and group count differ by lens. The design types include a triplet, an Ernostar, and at least one sonar. Filter sizes range from 49 to 55mm. The closest focus is 1 meter for all but the TTArtisan, which shows off by going as close as 0.9 meters. All of these lenses are manual focus. The native mounts vary by maker. Dimensions range pretty wildly, with the Nikon being the smallest by a margin and the TTArtisan the largest. Weight also ranges, with the Nikon being the lightest and the Canon the heaviest. Sharpness is based on multiple sample photos as well as the DOTS test chart. To that end, the Konica handily takes this category for being the sharpest lens across each aperture and being the lens that most clearly resolves the pixels on my monitor. The TTArtisan is a second here, despite the glow, because it still resolves details in sharp resolve. The Nikon and Canon round out this category. Build quality varied, with the Konica and TTArtisan being the two entrants which are all metal, and the Canon and Nikon having some, or frankly many, plastic parts. The Nikon has an aperture ring that feels a bit more solid than the Canon's aperture ring. The difference between the Konica and TTArtisan comes down to how they feel when being focused, and the Konica is a good deal smoother. Contrast is based on the test photos, and the results here are interesting and keep in line with the results so far. The Konica has stunning contrast with good transitions from dark to light areas, and it, again, walks away with this category quite easily. Star quality stems from the design of each lens's aperture. Personally, I tend to like lots of points with clear definition. To that end, the TTArtisan takes this based on those factors. Nikon arrives a close second, with the Canon and then Konica just way behind. Distortion is exactly nil on all four lenses. This is an incredible performance across the board on these. One interesting thing that this test shows quite well, since the camera was placed at the exact same focal point for all of the photos, and they were all taken at the same time, or, well, in sequence, not at the exact same second, but you get my point. This test shows a very slight difference in the angle of view between the lenses because more or less of the grid is shown. That's not something that's graded, though, and for this test, all of these lenses take first place. Light loss is negligible on the lenses writ large. The TTArtisan exhibits no perceivable light loss at any aperture, giving it an easy win. The Canon arrives second with no light loss by f4. The Konica and Nikon tie for third, with the light loss in these lenses disappearing at f5.6. Flare was apparent on each lens to different degrees, with the Konica having some discernible flare and the Canon having a minor veiling flare with general softness. The Nikon had a large area of flare, and the TTArtisan had a very large area of brightly colored flare. Ghosting occurred with all lenses, and on the Konica and Canon especially. I found the quality of ghosts to be very pleasant and, on the Canon especially, potentially beneficial in portrait use. However, the Showdown is based on empirical testable results not my warm and fuzzy feelings about lenses, so let's look at how much each lens ghosted under harsh testing only. To that end, the TTArtisan was the most resistant lens for ghosting, the Nikon second, and the Canon and Konica will tie for third. The Zidal analysis category is the hardest to judge this time because there is no clear winner. In the DOTS test chart, the TTArtisan is the clear loser because that test goes for technical perfection. The Konica is strongest in the center and the Nikon the strongest in the corners. Looking at the aberrations from fairy lights near the lenses with the lenses focused at infinity, and then their closest focus point, the TTArtisan is a solid winner at infinity because the lens elements are so far forward of the sensor that there's relatively little projection-related cat eye effect in the images, and then with close focus, the Canon has the most even illumination. So each lens wins one of the 4 categories here. And for the TTArtisans versus the others, the choice in this regard is purely aesthetic. For the others, I'll rank them Konica by a hair due to the astounding center sharpness and decent corners, Nikon a very close second owing to the strong corners, and then Canon because it had the most even illumination of the blurry lights. Handling was generally good for all of the lenses, with the difference in ranking coming down to the aperture ring's feel. The TTArtisan had the most pleasing tactile response for the aperture ring, and the Canon's ring felt a bit plasticky. Using golf scoring, the best possible score is 10 and the worst is 40. I was, honestly, hoping that the Konica would show up, grab a large handful of mashed potatoes, and deliver a fast and decisive blow to the competitors. Konica has, so far in these showdowns, really underperformed and often been the brand standing in the corner with a face full of pie. Konica did not deliver the decisive W I had hoped for, but did take this contest on the strength of the image quality and overall optical performance. Frankly, those are the key factors in these contests. The real result here for me was the TTArtisan, which only tanked one category, and that one terrible result was because it performed exactly as it was designed to perform. Honestly, as both this video and the full round glass review of the TTArtisan 100mm show, that lens is a really, truly good lens. Really, the TTArtisan probably should have won this contest had the contests been ranked based on the lens performing in a manner commensurate with the design, rather than an arbitrary definition of technical perfection. The Canon scores were scattered all over the board here, like pumpkin pie on the wall of the Denny's near my high school after that food fight my friends and I got into that ended up getting the cops called on us that one night, and that's really kind of surprising, both parts of that sentence. I expected that the Canon would be more consistent and not in terms of the amount of red in its column. And the Nikon is a very good lens that has stunning image character and a lovely warmth to the images too. Honestly, for most people it would be the best option in this list because the overall image delivery is exceptional in terms of being flattering to portrait subjects. But the big takeaway here is that none of these lenses are bad, nor should any of them be avoided. Honestly, it would not matter which of these 4 you have, you will probably be very happy with the results that they deliver. Hey, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this other one you'll probably really like too.